Fine. Hi, Anna DYSON from New Haven, in her wonderful home, Marcel Breuer House, very close to Yale. And hello, Stefan BEHNISCH, who has many offices in the world, but is stranded in Stuttgart right now.
Yeah.
You're not stranded.
Trapped in paradise, as we all are.
I brought you guys together to discuss a topic that's very close to both of your hearts and that basically your career. It's going to be the topic of sustainability, but also teaching. So you have a lot of things in common. Stefan used to be a teacher at Yale. You are a professor at Yale, and I think we're going to have very interesting topics today. So what I will do first, I will put on a few slides of Stefan's office and how it all came about. If I manage to share the screen, but I think I will. Can you see? Oh, yes. Okay, I will do Vollbildmodus. So this is basically Stefan and his dad, and Stefan and I, we met and we hung out and we were friends, and then I asked his dad for a job without telling him because I didn't want to get a job because Stefan and I were friends. So you see Stefan and his dad, Professor BEHNISCH in the picture here, and you also see the former partners who I love because they taught me everything that I know. A lot of the stuff that I know, I was taught at the BEHNISCH offices. And this is Stefan's office. He had his own office at the same time as his dad, and it was the avant-garde branch, and they were doing great things. And what Stefan clearly managed to do, he went viral and worldwide. To go viral these days is maybe not so good, but anyhow, you started not only an office in Stuttgart, in Boston, and Los Angeles, you also started one in Munich. And here you see how the offices look like and a few co-workers, and that's something that you can check out online. And this is just a few photographs of all the many, many projects that Stefan did with his own office, not his dad's, and how he really started an international office in the whole world. For now, I want Stefan to tell us something about Schinsheim, about how how you won the competition or how you got the commission, and how it basically it was a riot in a very positive way, that building.
Okay. Yeah, the Schinsheim building, it's an older buildings, but it's a key project of ours because it was our first building in the United States. The history, how we won the competition, is kind of funny because I first had opened an office in Los Angeles. And the sole reason, I never had really a plan. I never had a strategy. It happened because a co-worker of my father's left for Los Angeles. His wife wanted to go back. And at that time, I had some money to burn. So I said, why don't we try to do an office together in Los Angeles? And sure enough, about half a year later, we were invited for a competition by Lime Properties, that was a developer in Boston. And they wanted a sustainable building at that time. And they invited 5 architects, all of them very well-known architects, for the competition. And it was not really a design competition. They asked us to show an approach. How would we design the building if we were awarded the contract? And that's what we did. And we didn't expect anything. We thought it's a nice opportunity, nice try. Not much will come out of it. At least someone will pay for the travel and some good times. And we submitted it and we had to present it. And interesting enough, we were the only ones who actually did what they requested. They had asked to show an approach and not a design. Everybody else had full-blown designs and models and everything. And we came with a bunch of flimsy panels and sketches. And we won the competition, to our surprise. We won it and got it. And that was our first building. It was the first commercial LEED Platinum building in the United States. We did it together with Bureau Happold, who did also the MEP, Tony McLaughlin out of Bath. And yeah, it was a quite successful building for us because it was not only our first US building, but it was also a pretty radical building with light enhancement. Where we had a really hard time was the fat floor plates Americans tend to design or expect. Because here in Germany, usually you don't go deeper than 45 feet because of daylight and visual contact to the outside. And there we had a, I don't know, 120 by 120 foot building, yeah, which was, or 150 by 150 foot building. Deep floor plate, so we designed it from the inside out. We carved out a big atrium to get shallow floor plates and have tracking mirrors on the roof to bring daylight in the depth of the building. So it worked quite well for us, and the client was very happy, and it was a big adventure, especially since we had to get used to the idea that American architects work differently, that the building and designing tradition in US is quite different from Germany. I won't go in details, but that was a learning curve, an interesting learning curve, but we enjoyed the building very much. And the client enjoyed it very much. It was an adventure.
Super, thank you so much. The work that I'm gonna show that Anna is doing with her students at Yale. Yeah, you were my roommate when we taught at RPI together, and you have been on juries at City College. I have been at your juries, and you married also a very good friend of mine, and so you're my roomie and and my very dear friend, and I'm so glad that you're here today to join us. And I admire your work. I think you're doing very, very important things. You're researching, you're thinking about the future, and I think it's super relevant right now. So if you want to say something about the slides, and I'm your slide pusher.
Okay, thank you, Ruthie. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And obviously, it's a massive honor to share this time period with Stefan, who has been really a hero of ours for many, many decades now. Yeah, the truth is that the Genzyme Corporation building, it's really interesting to hear Stefan's take from the inside, from who the person who basically brought forth this this incredible moment. Because for us in the United States, this building was absolutely, it was such an important moment. And I think because even though, let's say, not everyone has followed the lead of Genzyme, what Stefan and his team showed was that even with these massive deep floor plate buildings, right, the what he has characterized as, you know, really the tyranny in our country at this point in the commercial building market of sort of socioeconomic and economic pressures that would dictate these very large floor plates that now have been allowed by building code. Perhaps it's not allowed in every building code, but he showed how we can work with this on a very, very fundamental level to completely change the notion of what a building can be and what is the relationship between a building and its natural context. And I really love this diagram that he shows that shows the circular relationship. I don't know, Ruthie, if you can go back to this, showing CO2. Literally, it's the plants producing CO2, that's right, the building, and then the oxygen generation. And then we could ask anyone in any building, but especially in the United States, you can ask people in the basement of the Yale Art and Architecture building, which is now Rudolph Hall, where is your oxygen coming from? A lot of people cannot actually even answer that question. So the fact that Genzyme were the clients, right, that this came from biology, really, I think that the major sea change that we can see in the 21st century is that biology and ecology will be the motivating factors in building design, not you know, mechanical, electrical, whatever. We're not designing for mechanical systems. We're not designing for volumes. We're not designing for the economy. We're designing for human beings who are biological organisms, and they have a relationship to the extended ecosystem. So I think his first concept designs are absolutely critical, and it's hard to describe how radical that was at the time. I think the fact, once again, that we had an audience of biologists rather than architects for this was really key in him winning this competition. And it was just such a great, perfect storm that he won this competition so that he could show how we could think about buildings in a really different way. So that clearly has been very influential for us and inspirational. We've taken a slightly different track in the sense that we are working very closely sometimes with architects who are producing commercial buildings. And increasingly, we're looking at a very small unit, like the unit of the house for ecosystem of system services, partly because what we found in the United States is that there's a real limitation in the sort of radical ecosystems innovation that you can effectuate in the budgetary and time constraints of a project. I think Genzyme is a great example of how, you know, they've been able to go as far as they can with that. But at the end of the day, we have to change, really, and it's not a buzz term, we need to change the DNA of the built environment. We have to change the way that we procure materials, how we extract them, how we install them. We have to change the way that we gestate energy on a building. We have to certainly change the relationship between human and non-human living systems within the built environment. So really from A to Z, energy, water, materials, we have to change all of the relationships. And so what we are looking at, why we kind of create a hybrid between academic research and how we can then maybe parallel track with building projects. What Ruth is showing on the screen right now is a very small example of how we had a very quick pop-up demonstration at Chaliwati Dance Festival in Accra, Ghana. This is in West Africa, where basically in West Africa, they have a chance to really recuperate a lot of post-agricultural waste. In this case, you're seeing coconut, corn, and soy binding in order to replace concrete and steel for very, very strong materials. So really, to be able to replace concrete and steel in the built environment for the large majority of our built environment systems is not a pipe dream. This is something that certainly happened 200 years ago, but you know, this is a bit of a back to the future thing, because the majority of building stock in the world was not actually concrete and steel as of pretty recently. We can now move towards sort of biogenic, if you will, or bio compatible material systems that participate in all the other different types of material economies we have, in this case, agriculture. So what we look at is the relationship between agricultural production, land use patterns, and then how we're gestating basically water and energy in sort of regions and districts. And what we want to see basically, and what we test, in this case, Ruthie is now showing the relationship. This is a large building. It's a large commercial building in the Bronx by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, showing the testing of production of fresh air from within a building through plant food growing materials. So what we do in this case is we really show essentially, and it's very much that drawing that Stefan showed us at the very beginning, is literally how can we reforestate our built environments, our cities from within? Why are we cutting ourselves off necessarily from other living systems? We've done that for thousands of years for very good technical reasons, but we're certainly capable of overcoming some of those technical impediments in the 21st century. And what we see also, which is really important in what we're testing here in the Bronx, is that relationship between human health and immunity and the presence of other species, in this case, even rare flowering plants. We can see, actually, this is research coming out of Europe, where we see great research in Finland showing that relationship between human health and immunity and the presence of rare plant species. So it's not any old green. It's not about, you know, Mother Nature knew something, right? It's not about just creating whatever we want. It's really about examining, you know, what is actually there and how can we work with that in cities and in buildings.
I find that very interesting, how you look at the material, at the light, at the earth, and the planting. I think that is usually undervalued in buildings. It's not easy to deal with plants in buildings. We all know that. We did in very long time ago. Our first so-called sustainable project was for the environmental agency of the Netherlands, a European pilot project, where we worked with biologists, and we had big greenhouses in there, and they told us exactly what we have to put in there, how much area of water we need, water surface, what plants we need to start the cycle of the oxygen, so we can keep the building with the greenhouses sealed in the winter and still have enough quality air in the building. I found that a very interesting exercise, especially since it's not that much space you need. There we needed a lot of space because there were biologists, they wanted to test it out, but it became a very successful closed cycle that still works till this day. The problem we encountered was the plants were growing too fast and too wild, so they had to be cut back a lot to keep them at bay. But it was I think this is really a worthy study and study to work on, and we should do that more.
Actually, Stefan, this is such a great anecdote that you make about the growth of plants, because we spent 2 decades trying to figure out how to stop the growth of plants and still have photosynthesis, when in reality, we should just design with what the plants want to do. Move quickly, in and out, that's what agriculture is. They want to grow quickly, let them grow, and then we can have multiple species in the built environment and every season. Who wants the same old flowers all year long? So we can work with them and do what the plants want to do. We talk about this like a designing what do the plants want. And if we negotiate what we need as humans and plants, then we don't have to put restrictions on them. They will photosynthesize best if they're moving quickly. So I think that's such a great thing, but it took us 20 years to figure this out. Just question, change it and just say, let them do what they want to do. So anyway, sorry.
I was on mute before when I wanted to say thank you, both of you, for your super eloquent descriptions of what you're working on, and also there's so much heart in your work with both of you, and I realized that you're passionate about these topics and you really have done many, many years of research, and that's why I wanted to throw you together. Although we have met all together in a bar in Yale before, but
I was on Stefan's review at Yale many, many years ago, maybe 20 years ago when he was teaching at Yale. Maybe,
really?
Yeah, I was on the review.
We were all babies back then. Yoo-hoo.
Yeah. I had much more to say back then than I do now, but I still talk. Sorry for interrupting.
I'm totally loving this, and and I have come with the ZDF to your old studio in Wall Street at one point, and we were doing a documentary about the facade, a photovoltaic facade that you were developing at that point. And I think that if you forced up teams, teamed up with somebody like Stefan, wonders could be possible, because I remember when I worked in the BEHNISCH office, they designed a building and then they just invented new chairs and new desks and new everything, new carpets and everything. So everything was just custom made because the buildings were so big. I never had that afterwards, Stefan. I miss it.
You need the right clients for that, though. And you need to be stubborn.
Well, we learned that over time, but we're not getting bitter. We're just getting a better sense of humor as we stay in this business year for year. So let me both ask you something. I mean, the topic of sustainability and how much more important in times of Corona it will be in the future, because I think we all became acutely aware of what's cooking with the nature right now, and how important it is to take care of our world. So you're both teaching, and you both taught at Yale. How is teaching changing right now? So I don't know, maybe Anna, you just finished your term. Tell us all about it.
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I think things will completely change. One of the things that keeps coming up, though, is that the students and maybe employees too. I don't know how it is for you, Stefan, but everybody says how important the studio is and how important it is to be together. Like that we all, you know, are grateful for Zoom. And I guess this is, what is this, Jitsi? We're all grateful for these platforms. But at the end of the day, you know, this is a very instrumentalized and reductive way to communicate. And it's great that we have it, but it does almost reinforce in the same way. I remember when Saskia Sassen came out with her book about global cities and said, global communications, internet communications will only make the cities more important, and it ended up being true. I think that now it's not that we're going to go back to what we had, because let's face it, a lot wasn't working about commuting, about the office environment, about the pressures. It wasn't a good life-work balance for so many people. But at the same time, we need each other and we need these environments. So I think we have to figure out what the relationship is between solitary work and quiet work and being at home and then being at the office. And it doesn't have to be, you know, an 80-hour work week at the office. Maybe in architecture will always be the 80-hour work week, but at least we will figure out what we're getting out of these communal environments, and we'll figure out what we're getting about being by ourselves and be a little bit more thoughtful about what we're doing. Because let's face it, you know, 40 years ago, we didn't have the opportunity to work, you know, in virtually in the way that we do now, or meet. The other thing that I think is important, Ruthie, about this is the degree to which we now, this is a good example on this meeting, be really global. We say that we're global, but, you know, hopping on a plane and jumping around all over the place is not being global. Maybe we can actually work globally together more with the virtual platforms. Maybe there's more of an opportunity. Many of us have been working like this for a long time, but we always had the fallback of being able to fly somewhere and meet people in person. You know, it's not that balance. And I think we need to figure out what that is.
Stefan, what are your thoughts on it? I mean, you have a huge office. You're in so many different countries, have branches there. You also teach, you have guest professorships. What are your thoughts?
It's pretty much along the same lines. This is now in the, let's say, last 10 years, the second major crisis we see. The first one was a purely man-made crisis, a financial crisis. And actually recovering from this crisis was a huge missed opportunity. Mm-hmm. Because we all went back to the same ways as before, just a bit more frantic, more chaotic. I think there was a big misconception of globalization, which makes it also very difficult for some people, because we thought globalization is fractures, production chains, flying all over the map. And I did cut down on that actually 2 years ago a little bit, not enough, because we did a calculation of our offices, the CO2 footprint. I have personally a CO2 neutral home with photovoltaics and geothermal everything. But with my flying, I totally ruined the balance of it. Also, one of our guys here in the office, he drives a big fat diesel SUV and commutes every day 120 kilometers each direction, or 100 kilometers each direction. His and my CO2 footprint is more than the rest of the offices together.
Wow.
Yeah, so we decided he gets an electric car. I have to cut down seriously on the flying. And we started that. And actually, it was not easy, because we were not forced to optimize these virtual discussions we have right now. Yeah, we thought the digitalization of the workplace is not really there yet. And suddenly we are forced to do that. And suddenly it works. We improved, we can draw on the screen, we can discuss. Actually, it's often more precise, more concentrated, better than in-person meetings. Really, because
No,
in-person meetings, you travel 2 or 6 or 10 hours to meet for 2 hours. Then it turns out it's 4 hours you meet because it's such an effort.
Yeah.
These meetings, whatever, everybody understands now, what you cannot solve in 1 hour video conference, you're not going to solve in the next 6 hours. So 1 hour is plenty enough. So I believe this forcing us to really embrace the digital world here brought some interesting aspects. And while I agree, for students especially, but also for us, the personal relationship, what psychologists say, the most important sense we have for sympathy or antipathy is the smelling. It's not the hearing, the seeing, it's the smelling. So you need, let's say, 1 out of 4 meetings, you need the personal encounter, you know, the mingling, and you Americans would say shooting the shit. What you don't do over TV. It's very simple. And that's very important. But I would say we could cut down the traveling by 75% without, and being actually more efficient. So the social aspect is important. And my prediction is for the future of the workspace that offices will get smaller and smaller and smaller, and they will become communication centers where people meet 1 or 2 days a week and have some swing workspaces, maybe a third of the workspaces they have normally. And the meeting will become more important and more social and more concentrated. And maybe even the partying will become more important, the social aspect of it, and the pure work, just administrative work or just doing details or everything, that can be done from home, or like a lot of young people, they use libraries. And I expect that these interdisciplinary working lounges where you rent a desk or whatever will become very popular. And I'm not talking about WeWork here. I'm talking about people being in one room working together and working interdisciplinary together. So that will create some freedom, but it also will create a lot more interdisciplinary knowledge and work. What we shouldn't forget in this crisis, a big element of this crisis, which is really being a problem for many people, is that suddenly the schools and kindergartens are closed. So suddenly you're at home not only working and trying to communicate, but you have to take care of the kids, and you have to do everything at the same time, which is for a lot of people stress because they live in too small places and apartments. So if this becomes more common, it has some impact also for how we design living spaces, how we design apartments, and so on. And the last thing I want to add is I sure hope after this crisis we don't go back to before. We learn from this crisis and don't repeat the same mistake we did 2010-11.
I sure hope so as well. I mean, it's such a difficult time, but an important time, and I think, you know, we all are, you know, we think a lot and all the time, and I think you made some really good points, and that also points that make us look forward to the future, most definitely. One last question I want to ask both of you, and I don't know which one of you wants to start. How will your life change? Will you start a beach bar? Will you stay in the country? Will you go back to the big city? are you moving to LA? I'm just wondering. I was there at when 9/11 happened, and it affected everybody's life at the time, especially in New York. And I completely changed my life around after this. And I think many people did. Some people split. Some people got married right away and had babies. Some people switched countries or changed jobs. Do you have any thoughts what you're gonna do next, or is everything gonna stay the same?
Well, I would love to defer to Stefan, so I have more time for this question.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, briefly. Nothing personal, but I don't feel any pressing urge to move to US right now.
Okay.
It's a cluster. But what changes for me now? For me, the timing is kind of funny. I'm turning 64 now. So I have offices, I have good partners, and I'm looking at what can I do different now? What other stuff can I do? Can I go back a little bit more in research and move a little bit back from the offices? So the timing for me is quite interesting now, because I was looking for a change anyway, and this just speeds things up. Like everything in this Corona crisis, I don't think it will trigger radical change, but changes that are in the pipeline will be speeded up. It's almost like a burning glass.
Like an accelerator.
It will accelerate a lot of things. And for me, it's probably rather less traveling than more traveling, working more like I do right now, remote, and focus on things I wanted to I always wanted to write. That was actually before I became an architect. I wanted to become a journalist and to write. And yeah, I don't want to go back in this frantic running office projects, fighting. I mean, our profession, building buildings, is an eternal fight. Yeah. And it's running in circles, and I'm looking forward to step a little bit back from that and support the offices in maybe focusing more on, do we have to do so much, or should we focus more on the individual projects again? The last 5 years, again, like before 2008, the built architecture was perceived as a commodity rather than as a cultural contribution. And I would like to focus more to bring it back to a more cultural contribution, the architecture. And I think talking about sustainability, there is so much to discover. We think we mastered the subject, but we are not even really at the beginning of the possibilities. So my focus will be more into that and traveling less.
But we're still gonna meet for dinner in Munich once in a while. Promise.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a serious travel, you know. I'm
Yeah,
not
so
talking about US.
To each other in Europe.
A real bear hug, that's for sure. Anna, what's gonna change?
Oh gosh, I couldn't agree with Stefan more that this is an accelerator. I mean, let's face it, if we've been in any way sensitive or thinking about what's going on in the last few decades, we can say that we all knew the meltdown was coming, right? We all knew that that we cannot continue the way we are. It's quite obvious. That's the whole basis of the word sustainability. What we do is unsustainable. But instead of thinking of, you know, mitigating what we already do, or, you know, kind of shifting a few things around, really looking at massive, like, wholesale changes, diagrammatically different relationships, I think are important. I mean, without, you know, sounding so melodramatic, but it is a bit of a melodramatic moment. For us, we see, and this is why, once again, going back to that theme of Genzyme Corporation and the fact that it was biologists that were the clients there, very important to have the right clients, very important to have all the stakeholders aligned in built environment process, which is why it's so hard to do anything in built environment process, because the stakeholders are so complex. But I would just say that we have to change almost everything, right? We have to change energy, we have to change materials, we have to change relationship to other living systems. So in that way, we are really living in a massive technological revolution. Yes, we are. I agree with you, Stefan. Every day I wonder, can I continue to live in this country? So we have our particular, we have our particular pain points here with what's this kind of civil Cold War that we've been going on for, you know, maybe the better part of 4 or 5 decades. I was born into it, I know it very well, and now it's coming to a head between people who really want to deny the reality of what's happening and people who actually want to do something about it, want to engage with reality. So, so this is a massive cultural divide if we're talking about architecture being a cultural product, but I would prefer to, you know, look at a much, much bigger picture. And I'm not sure also that, you know, it's easy for, you know, Europeans to look at the monster child that is North America and say, or America, and say, oh my God, what are you guys doing? We need your help. I think the point is that, like, it won't be better when others in charge, because as a globe, we've got a big problem. And the issue is that we've got to change things. So how would we make massive wholesale changes? Our economy and everything we do, everything we make, is basically in a direct line from the Stone Age, from the Bronze Age. We basically use fire and very concentrated forms of energy to mold materials and distribute them. And that's what we do as a human society. And so we have to completely change the way that we make things, the way that we travel, the way that we move, everything to be commensurate with natural energy cycles. That is a very, very difficult thing to do, but it's not impossible. We see all of the emerging things that are happening where that would head. And the question is, what would it take to really make this? What we've seen actually with coronavirus and with the whole, you know, if you look at the numbers from the last 2 months, believe it or not, the amazing blue skies that we see all over the global cities everywhere, it's not enough actually to have completely flattened our airline industry, to have completely flattened manufacturing, et cetera, globally. Even that, if we sustained it, would not be enough to change the course of what we're seeing with climate change. And so we can see that it's not going to be good enough to just, you know, do less and travel less. And traveling less is important. I agree with Stefan. I think there's so many things we can learn just from the staycation, just being, you know, in our environment and being still. But at the same time, we can't just say we're going to do less than what we did before. We got to do things completely differently. So I think that that's the fire that is lit under us, you know, as a group. We keep saying, not just it's good enough for us to do our research, it's not good enough. Our research is not impactful enough. The question is, and Ruthie, you used the term viral at the beginning. Viral is the most important term that we would ever use. Because if you look from a satellite, if you look at the Earth from a satellite, you will see that the seeds that were planted in modernity, whether they be construction, whether they be energy, whatever, through the last few centuries, really with a kind of fever pitch with the early modernists and with towers and everything, we can see that the Anthropocene from the globe in a way that we couldn't see 100, 200 years ago. So our built environment, our relationship to other living systems, whatever, all of that has exploded in a viral fashion in the last 100, 200 years, probably 200 years, 300 years, whatever, wherever you want to see the roots of all of that. But the point being that we can change quickly. Viral can change. If we have the right ideas, if we are convincing with our ideas, if our ideas are irrevocably better than what's come before, then I think that we can be convincing. I think we make too many excuses in these cultural Cold Wars. Like, yes, it's easy for me to look at what's happening to our country and throw my hands up and say, with that many idiots, you know, we're never gonna prevail. It's like we're never gonna solve the problems that we have. But the truth is that if we are convincing, if something really makes sense as in a viral fashion, in a kind of behavioral, organizational fashion, it's not, it could just be one building. And The Genzyme Corporation was a very, very important building for us, as I said, extremely important. But I also agree with Stefan about the problem with when we're making buildings and when we have all of those constraints of regulation, of socioeconomic, of building code, whatever the expectations are, it will be hard to change things wholesale. And so this is the thing where I feel that we need to offer completely different solutions. And I think that they're not going to happen necessarily from the places that we think they're going to happen. I think that, you know, these very dominant countries like ours and the other country that's very dominant and other continents that are very dominant, I'm not sure if that's where the solutions will come from. I think we're going to really have to be very humble in the face of the possibility to do things very, very differently.
I think the expression, you know, just to say that we have to be humble, I think it's a humbling time. I can always rely on you. And now, of course, you didn't talk about starting a beach bar somewhere, but you took
I'm going to keep going, me. I have to.
So, but you also answered the question, because you're not gonna start a beach bar. You're gonna have even more to do, and you're gonna do even more research, and you're gonna develop your studio.
No, darling. Beach bar at the office. Yes. No, we have the beach bar with both end. I'm a Gen X. I learned from Venturi. It's both end. Beach bar and but seriously, honestly, this is another thing. We've put people in cages. We put the animals in cages. They gave us the virus. It's all part of the same diagram. In our offices, we put people in cages. In our buildings, we put people in cages. Come on, the beach bar has got to be right front and center. It's got to be that, you know, we're flowing with also our own lives, and we haven't created situations where people are happy. You know, we haven't created situations where people are really in tune with their own natural rhythms and what they need to do over the course of a day or a week or whatever. So I'm going to say, no, we're not going to check out completely, but also we got to figure out how the beach bar becomes also what we're doing. Because the beach bar is about escape. It's about, because we don't love our life, we go to the beach bar, right? So how can we have a life where we don't feel like we have to escape, you know? And we have to ask things very, very fundamentally across the board. How do we want to live? How do we want to organize as a material society? What is our relationship to fellow human beings is what we've been asking for millennia, but now we've got to be much more serious about what our relationship is to non-human living systems as well. You know, we have to really be serious about this because it's not working. And we're really suffering as a result of the way that we've cut ourselves off. Like, just to full circle back to BEHNISCH's brilliant diagram, Stefan's brilliant diagram, because it says it all. And I'm not surprised it won the competition against everybody, because it says it all when we put those plants inside the building. Do you know what I mean? It's like, all of a sudden, it's not just about us. You're going to design that building for the plants too. You know, we've got to be much more inclusive in the way that we think about what we're doing.
Thank you so much. And I have one last question for Stefan. And it has to do with the Biennale. So, you know, it's preview day, Thursday, the 21st, when we're going to show this. And usually half of the architecture crowd who can get on a plane or swim or take a boat is going to Venice. So we're going to celebrate this together, basically. And I think it's a great day to be speaking about all these topics. Yeah, Stefan, how are we gonna celebrate the Biennale? By talking about the new challenges, like we just did?
Not sure. I don't know, the Biennale this year. I have the feeling we have different problems right now to solve and to think about. Can't answer this, Wood.
No problem. I just wanted to, you know, sort of talk about what's you know, what's going on and what we're missing out on this year. But as you said, there's a lot of really pressing issues, and we all sit at home, think even more, and or get new ideas. And I know that the two of you, you have always been, you know, my heroes, and you are great thinkers. And thank you so much for this talk. I hope you had fun doing it. Is there anything else you want to discuss?
No, I think we are good, Anna. I think we are good.
I think we covered a few things.
Thank you so much, guys. Stay online. I'm going to talk to you with another few sentences, but we're going to stop recording now. But stay with me. Stay with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Today, we had a visit to an architecture office behind this, and so on. We will take you around their new house. What's even better, Jacob van RIJS, one of the director, you know, the VR from MVRDV, will join too. Yes, that is a big deal. Let's go! Hey! So yeah, this is how the neighborhood looks like. That's the office. Jacob.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. Good to see you. Finally in person.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. The sun goes through. Well, what we like to have in the new office, what we don't have in the old office, green. But then, of course, it has to be done in an efficient way. So we lift it up. That's why the green is in the air. Staircase which we use for speeches.
So for lectures and everything.
Sometimes groups of students coming.
How would you describe this office in one word?
Cool. Amazing.
Playful. Amazing.
Why do you have to ask that difficult question?
That's already 5 words.
Yeah, it's like,
Okay, Jacob, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. So welcome, Jacob van RIJS. I'm so happy that you're talking to us today. MVRDV or MVRDV, as we say in Germany. I highly admired your work for many decades now, and I'm super grateful that you're talking to us today.
Wow, thank you very much. Nice to be able to speak to you in Munich, because it's nice to, yeah, it's a city where we have been working quite a lot in the past. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, so maybe to explain how the two of us got together, we usually have a lecture series and an open bar on Thursday night in our school, and right now clearly both of it is not possible, and we don't know when it's going to start again. And so we started, and I'm doing this seminar about a mobile bar, and so we started inviting people that are super interesting to talk to us. And so you're one of your partners, Jan Knicker. You know, I met him in New York, and he proposed that the two of us would entertain each other today for a quick half an hour, and thank you so much. So Jan and I started the conversation about how important it is to have a really nice working atmosphere. Do you want to tell us something about your working atmosphere, your MVRDV house? I saw a couple of videos. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is indeed something that we did when we moved to our new place, and normally our office was a big mess, and we never really cared about our own spaces as much as we cared about the display, the environment of our clients, and we thought it would be interesting to be our own clients in this case, so to make something for ourselves, and that turned out, yeah, really nice. I mean, we also took it quite serious, so we had a team, and we had to present it to the staff, and yeah, it was really good. And I think it definitely changed the atmosphere in the office. Of course, we were also lucky to find the place itself, and the whole area around it, let's say, improved well together with us, so to say. It was an area of Rotterdam that has been a little bit neglected, and now is really kind of a hotspot. So it's not just us that are there, but there's many other people around us.
You did that 2016, as usual, just quicker than all the other people thinking about co-working, and so I think it's a super beautiful concept. Also, I followed you through a path through the office. So did you invent color blocking? Look what I got for you today.
Okay. The right color. You're in the yellow corner. Well, we thought it was we made our own furniture to sort of the team table to an infinity table where people can basically smoothly, without any subdivisions, work together. So you can, like a harmonica, you can put more or less people there. And we also said that it would be good to split the meetings from the workspace. So people had to move, get out of their chairs, and they had to talk to each other. Of course, you can have a chat to your team table, to your team people at the same table. But when you have a really more substantial meeting, you make a move, and then there's a collection of the different rooms with each of these rooms have a color. So that is a simple but it's a very kind of effective concept.
You have many offices in different countries because you're basically building everywhere in the world. You know, a library in China, Werk 12 in the Werksviertel in Germany, in Munich. You know, I love that building so much that 2 weeks after the opening, I signed up in a gym that now I can't use.
Cool. So it's good for your health. I'm actually jealous that I cannot sport there myself. So it's.
I'm in the pool and I'm thinking of you. Just imagine.
Right. No, but that's a really fun. It was a great. It's a whole area is developing good, and I just saw pictures from Johannes Ernst showing me the hotel that has been finished right now on top of the kind of silos, kartoffel silos. So overall, I think it's really for Munich a special place, and anyway, it's a special place because I think the contrast between the center of Munich and the Werksviertel is quite interesting. No, but that's true. Well, we have, of course, we now have an office in Paris and in Shanghai, and now the team in Paris is growing, so we're gonna design their office as well. But it's a bit delayed now because of the whole Corona thing. But we also found a beautiful space in Paris for that group, and we might go to Berlin in the next years. So that's the next.
I heard
on the menu. Yeah.
I heard about. I might ask you to hire me if you give me the same quality of office space. Are you gonna take this concept of the MVRDV house and transfer it to the multiple locations?
Well, depends a bit on the location, but we like to use the same tables, and of course the meeting rooms depends a bit on the availability. But I think what's important indeed is that you treat offices in a more different way. And I just spoke to a client from Germany that also wants to do something else, and said, well, the German offices are really behind, so to say. The office culture is very conservative still in relation to what happens in other places in the world. There's more experimentation in workspaces.
That's why
we're something to gain, and I think we did some offices in Munich, and of course that we could do something with the urbanistic concept, but in terms of flexibility, it was all very, very based on the kind of standard grid of the 135 thing, and then I think all over Germany this 135 grid is rolled out, and
Tell me about it.
A monoculture of efficiency that becomes also, if you want something else, people like to have a different way of working. I think that's kind of sinking in, and let's see. Especially now with the Corona effect, the way people use office spaces will change. So it's not so much about sitting behind your desk anymore. It's more about communication, I think.
And I can imagine that the offices that you did here in Munich in Werk 12, and also the offices that you did for yourself, that you can adapt really easily to, because you have a lot of space and people can just, work further apart or in a safe space or a safe corner or whatever.
Yeah, actually today, as we speak, we're opening up the office again after 8 weeks of kind of minimum presence, and of course it's chaotic, but in the sense that we made this whole circulation diagrams that people don't cross each other, and it's a bit weird, but that's probably the way it is for now. And I think about maybe 20% of the people will indicate that they like to be there, and others will come more irregular. Yeah. But of course, let's see how things continue. But ultimately, I think the office will change. I think after this, because as people work from home and realize that it's actually going okay, and that this mixture of work and life balance is actually an important element in well-being. So that means that the role of the office and the role of the home will change.
I think so too. You have been pre-thinkers for many decades, and I know that you're always a little bit ahead of everybody, no matter if you think about what would happen to the meat industry or how is our use of food going to change. Jan gave me a little snippet saying that you're working on a concept for a new city, and you have been for a while. Can you tell us anything about it, or is it super secret?
That's exactly what he told you, but we have there are many projects around, and some of them are more secret than others. But I think ultimately, the fact that we're able to work in different places, there's this kind of collection of ideas that we keep on developing, and like big city that you mentioned about the meat industry is like more than 20 years old, but I think it's still very relevant but of course then maybe one day it will appear, you never know. But about the city, I think I think we all have this. We have our urban team is actually supporting different design teams in the office. So the development of urbanism, we try to not to keep only in the level of the city, but in a more scaleless way. So you don't have to design a city to do urbanism. That's what we think. Yeah.
I mean, you're probably working with demographics a lot, knowing you guys.
Well, I think it is a topic that especially in Germany as well, it's important with the aging society. But I think that everybody is now realizing that when you make a building, it's lasting longer than 5 years. So therefore, the demographics are important. So when you make something for students today, it could be for elderly people in 20 years. That's of course the flexibility of buildings, and then I don't mean the 135 grid, but more that things can change functions. That's important. And so also that you don't have to make disposable buildings, but buildings that can easily more or less change without losing their character. Yeah.
So do you think we're going to need more space? Clearly something has to change with the mobility concepts, and again, I think that your country, where you mostly work, is far ahead of that. But what would your ideal city look like? Let's just say in 5 years from now.
Well, actually today or this week I'm cycling a lot. This is kind of old-fashioned for somebody here in the Netherlands, but you see the incredible increase of the popularity in bicycles. And I think this, and I read this, there's this quite a cool company called Van Moof. They're designing bicycles from Amsterdam, but they're actually selling them all over the world. And they said, look, we're not going to make normal bicycles anymore. We're only going to make electric bicycles because that's the future. Because in many cities in Holland it's flat. When you have the wind against you, you would need it. But in many places it's either too warm or it's a bit hilly or it's complicated. So let's just only make this electrical bicycle. So that's already indicating something there where maybe a certain amount of vehicles are not needed anymore. I get annoyed by these little mopeds, for instance. So if they don't exist anymore, and everybody has an electric bicycles, then you don't need mopeds anymore. So I think it has a lot to do with mobility and how people move around, and of course that means as well how the functions in the cities are organized, so that people don't need to travel that much anymore. But there's a mixture of working and living environments, when that's organized in a more smart way, then you don't get this endless traffic jams and these kind of things. So that I think a lot is related to this. So if you improve that, the whole well-being will definitely improve. But that's, I think, small steps. And here in Rotterdam, we it's not really a bicycle city in relation to Amsterdam or Utrecht, but things are changing, and it's nice to see that the problems are now, for instance, in Amsterdam, it's about too many bicycles. That means they have to really think differently. That the car has the main space, and then the bicycles are on the side, and that doesn't work anymore because it just doesn't fit. Especially with the distancing, we're going to get a really interesting transformation.
Bicycle highway, probably.
Yeah, well, true, but also that the kind of in certain areas. I think it's now Milan. They said, or what was it? They make the whole center of the city in a kind of we call it like Dutch call it woonerf. So where everybody has to go only 30 kilometers per hour, and it's basically the cars are the guests, and the people and the bicycles are the main movers. So you don't have roads anymore that are only for cars. So that's going to be interesting. And in the way we use the water in Holland will also change. I think that it's not just for recreation, but maybe for transportation as well. So I think there's all kind of tendencies that you can already imagine that will be extrapolated in time, and this crisis can help that development, I think. So things that are normally unthinkable are now thinkable again.
So one big mystery about your company is how do you put teams together? You create a specific work atmosphere. I can see that in the MVRDV house, the way you provide, a different kind of workspace. You think about modular housing and modular high-rises before anybody else does. You think about using rooftops and do it in a very wonderful design way as on top of that. So you always have very, very deep concepts behind it, and you also have a lot of humor in all of your concepts. Like, that we might lack a bit, but we're working hard on it. How do you do that? How do you put together teams?
Well, I don't know. I think it's a kind of the attitude. It's kind of we don't. Yeah, how do we put teams together? I think we organized the office in a way that we kept the size small. So we not have one big office, but we have many small offices inside the office, and that's, I think, healthy for keeping people. That people are able to share their ideas, and if you have a very hierarchical office, it might be less easy. So after we had Market Hall in just 2014, we had to expand, and the new office was part of that. And we realized that didn't really work the old way. I think every company that is scaling up meets a moment when that doesn't work in the old way. And we actually had meetings with a kind of advisor who was specialized in team working and companies and these kind of things. And as an architect, you never think about that. So he sort of helped us to decide where to go. And then we decided to work with the studio system, where we have studios that are 20 to 30 people max. And these studios are kind of medium-sized offices inside our office. and they share then the facilities from the office, and they share the attitude, and but there can be some more differences between them. And then every team has certain people that work together between the studios about technology or about sustainability, or about, but also very practical issues. And that recipe allowed us to expand without losing the spirit.
Okay. When will you travel again? I mean, I don't ask you to be the politician here, but I mean, will you guys travel to your remote locations as soon as it's possible again, or?
Well, I think of course it was it's a blessing in disguise in a way. Of course, when you travel, it's always fun, but also then it's also good to be home. So the fact that I don't travel now is actually, I don't mind not to travel at the moment. I think many people don't really mind in the office. But of course, there will be a moment where we have to pick it up again, and that means it will probably be less, because you realize that you don't need to meet also our clients because they want us to come. Realize that maybe we can just have a Zoom meeting, and it saves much more time and money. So that will probably be one big plus after this whole event, and that you, for instance, lectures. Why would you give a lecture? Go to some school and I give you can talk like this. Of course, it's not really the same, but there might be less lectures coming, and could be. We also in Berlin. I'm teaching in Berlin. We're also discussing to say, well, maybe we should go for the online lecture, but of course, it's not really the same, because you have this. We have to develop a format for that, so that it's not like looking at a YouTube movie, but something in between. And that will also happen maybe for site visits. So if you have devices, you can walk around. We just had site visits where we just where the clients walked around with a camera and actually with somebody else filming it. It was quite good, and we could see basically everything without going there.
So VR might play a bigger role, and as you said, we might not fly to New York for a half-an-hour meeting, or go to Berlin with the train for 6 hours, have a half-an-hour meeting. And the question is, are we going to do juries in real time? I guess so, but it is going to change a lot. But I think also a lot of the changes is for the better. And I think it's so amazing what we can all do right now in a day. I mean, it's like people talk about the Corona burnout, because you basically have no break where you sit in your car or on your bicycle. So you have much more time in the day.
Yeah.
And clearly, now that we all slowly but surely go back to offices again, our school is not going to open for a long time. So at least not this term. So that's why we're doing this. And we're already trying to do a new format. And of course, at one point, everybody should be paid again when they do lectures. But by not having such a carbon footprint, right? It's really a good thing.
We do the same thing in Berlin. I'm teaching at the TU. And you get people, they have time for you when they normally would not have time. So that means you can have special attention from people that are normally not able to give that attention. That's quite nice. But we're also thinking about what's next when we have to starting with the first year students. How can you start digital? That's an interesting, maybe a really born digital story. But model making online is not so handy. So that will have an effect. I think we'll have to see that, what the outcome of that is.
It was figured out before us, so please let me know. Share.
We'll have to see. But every school has the same issues. I think that's interesting to learn from each other. And,
So I have one last question that's semi-personal. What did you miss most, and what is the thing that you all are gonna go back to the office little by little, but did you miss the most to talk about competitions in real life and work with models? Did you miss the students the most, your coworkers? What is it? What do you want to do first?
Well, of course, now everything is kind of practical in the sense that you have you can directly start talking and this kind of and you have to plan that, because then you have this sort of invitation for a meeting, and so your whole day is sort of planned. And I think that when you're at your office, it's a bit more unplanned. So then you have this kind of mere meetings in the corridor and this kind of informal in between things. That is something that we still haven't covered that online. So and now we're actually making our way back just for these kind of meetings, so that we have, instead of all the time online meetings, we have every now and then an offline meeting. We have large meeting rooms, so then we can do that again. So that's will actually, yeah, certain things you cannot really, you can make a sketch and you can send it over, and I think they have this new software where you can all work together on the same screen. It's all interesting, but it's nice to be in the same room and have a kind of workshop. That is not really the same online yet.
Yeah, we missed that too. But if you're okay with that, I would probably show Werk 12 to this. Not just a few shots. And also,
now that it's already running for a while, I think the Werksviertel is an interesting example, I think, for a transformation of a factory area into a more lively mixed use. And I think I remember when we presenting the architectural projects, we were in the meeting with the Stadtbouw Commission, and there were like a lot of projects discussed, and half of them were in the center, and it was all about impossible, not legal issues, light, whatever, B-plan, and so on. Everything was impossible, and then we had the Werksviertel, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be tough. But then everything was suddenly okay. And maybe people really desire something else, but it's impossible to, because all kind of regulations and bylaws. So you need kind of alternatives, you need escapes. I think that's what I think the Werksviertel showed us, at least, that maybe you as well, that we need to be maybe a bit less stressed out for certain areas. Things will be okay, and instead of making all that kind of verboten, and instead of making it make things possible instead of impossible.
Verboten sucks, and I think that you really made such an initial, it's such a great building to really, I hate that Bilbao effect, but it basically really already has a different atmosphere. As soon as I saw your building and I went in there, I wanted to be part of this, and and once all of this is over, hopefully we will meet in the Ferris wheel and we can all we have our own cabins.
Yeah. No, there's this bar. I haven't been. I only saw the building. Let's say it was more or less finished. The sports club was open, but not all the bars were open yet. So I think it's nice to see when the building is completely occupied and the neighborhood is more or less filling up. It would be fun, and definitely look forward to coming back to Munich. And
I think
then,
you created one of the bigger landmarks and a really meaningful building in Munich, and I'm super curious what kind of a nickname it will get, because it's Impf and Or and Bau, and you can just imagine what people will pick.
That was a good collaboration. I think we decided to put letters on the facade, and we couldn't agree what the words were. And the idea was then to make a competition between artists and kind of schriftsteller, word artist, and to make that decision. And then these guys came up with this comic book slogan, and then everybody said, yeah, this is just what we need. So I have to credit them as well. And so we organized the whole thing, and they just chose the letters, and they were in a way so silly and straightforward, and nobody can miss the meaning. But sometimes you need input from others, and in this case the artists made a great participation.
But just for you as an architecture office with a big name giving space to artists, and also, I mean, your lettering in, even I, MVRDV, MVRDV, depending on which language you say it, it's a very confusing office name, but also I think it's hilarious. It's clearly your names and stuff, but I love it. So I think it makes a lot of sense for one of your buildings.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and let's meet in real life then when things are over in Munich. We're trying to do some more there, but will take some time. But it's always been a good place for us. We have been doing now three projects there, and since one of our first buildings abroad was also there in Interfering. So it has been always a good reception for us in Munich, and
we really need more of you. So I can.
Okay, let's go for that, and enjoy your teaching at the Fachhochschule, and till next one. Yeah?
So thank you so much. Have a great day and say hello to your team and Jan, and we speak again very soon.
Okay. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.